You and your wife can just sit on the floor, right? Mike, the department head, said with a malicious grin. Today is the company's 30th anniversary party. It's astonishing that he could say such a thing at such a significant event. Moreover, it's the first time he meets my wife, Linda. Normally, he'd be a bit more considerate. As I seethed internally, Jessica, the president's daughter, took an even more surprising action. Out of nowhere, she brought over a flattened cardboard box and told us, "Use this." The cardboard dropped to the floor, kicking up dust. "Shall we go home?" I said to Linda. "Yes, let's," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. And just as we got bruised, we were about to leave the venue. My name is John. I'm 40 years old. I live a modest but happy life with my same-aged wife, Linda, and our middle school-aged daughter, Anna. Linda and I got married when we were both 25, but our relationship dates back to high school. Back then, we were just friends, but over time, through many ups and downs, we gradually deepened our relationship and came to recognize each other as partners. Having been together for so long, we're not just a married couple but also best friends. We are able to discuss anything. That's why, in our younger days, we often ended up arguing over things we wanted to say to each other. But the quarrels between us were like brief showers. Just as the saying goes, after the rain, the ground hardens. Our anger would naturally dry up and vanish after a while, leaving only our affection for each other. And I always felt like we understood each other better than before the quarrel. Since having Anna, our arguments have significantly decreased. The same children are a bond truly resonates with me. It's not that we consciously decided to avoid arguments for Anna's sake, but we naturally started to feel less irritated with each other. We want to continue living happily as a family of 3. With this hope in my heart, I commute between work and home every day. Today, like every other day, I was jostled in a crowded train on my way to work. The morning rush is a daily ordeal, but when I think about working for my family, it doesn't seem so bad. I'm sure everyone on this train is working hard for something. Thinking this way makes even the harsh conditions of a crowded train feel meaningful. And what awaited me at work was a pile of menial tasks. Though blessed with a loving family, I'm facing some issues at work. This company, employing 2,000 people, is a successful enterprise that has continued to grow since its establishment 30 years ago. I joined this company about a year ago. Until then, I had been working for a small, family-run business, which went bankrupt due to financial difficulties. In these times, when small businesses are failing one after another due to the bleak economy, becoming unemployed suddenly isn't rare, but I never thought it would happen to me. When it did, my first thought was of my family. After I lost my job, Linda took on several part-time jobs to support us until I found new employment. While I was grateful for her support, finding a new job wasn't easy for someone in their late 30s who had only ever worked in small companies. At one point, I even considered asking Linda to take Anna and move back to her parents' house. Linda's parents are wealthy, so it seemed like it might be better for them without me. I wondered if they would be happier if she divorced me. However, when Linda learned of my thoughts, she was angrier at me than ever. "Don't decide our happiness," she exclaimed. I was taken aback by her unexpected anger. But then she softened. "We're a family of 3. That's what makes us happy. If you're in trouble, I'll support you no matter what. So don't ever talk about splitting up again." Linda, with her gentle face, seemed a bit sad too. I felt deeply ashamed for having caused her such sorrow and started to take steps towards finding a new job. It was when I was approached by Mr. Thompson, the president of my current company. He was a close friend of my father since college and seemed to have kept an eye on me even after my father's passing. Knowing that the company I had worked for went bankrupt, he invited me to join his company. For me, this was an opportunity I hadn't even dared to hope for, to land a job again, and even at a large corporation, so I immediately accepted the offer. But soon I realized that the large corporations have high thresholds. Unlike me, who started working right after high school due to the loss of my father, the main provider, everyone else had higher education. They also had high pride and a stoic nature, living for their work. Among them, Mike, an elite department head in his early 30s, was particularly harsh on me, a man without a degree, giving me only menial tasks. I don't know how a middle-aged man with a low education managed to get into this company, but don't get in our way. He said on my first day. Since it was a secret that I was invited by President Thompson to join this company, I just silently agreed with understood. Although it was frustrating, I reminded myself that getting caught up in such petty pride was pointless. I decided to work hard for the sake of my family. However, Mike's treatment of me worsened day by day. No matter what I did, he complained, and he didn't even call me by my name but by Johnny. "Hey, Johnny, copy these documents for everyone before I get back from lunch. Oh, and make me a hot coffee when I return," he'd say. "Yes, sir, as you wish," I responded. This response was also dictated by Mike's orders. I wasn't even allowed to answer in my own words. At first, it was embarrassing and unpleasant, but I got used to it after a while, and I naturally started calling him sir like a butler. Getting used to it is terrifying, but also a survival skill. No matter how unpleasant things were at work, seeing Linda and Anna's faces at home made everything worthwhile. Gradually, I even started thinking of Mike's harassment as something I endured for my family. Just as I was getting used to Mike, a new person appeared in my life. Jessica, Mr. Thompson's daughter. Apparently, she was dating Mike and started showing up in our department more often. And Jessica, the president's youngest daughter, also started calling me by the Johnny every time she saw me. Being called that by the woman in her early 30s, the youngest daughter of the president, was mentally challenging, but given her status, she was even more untouchable than Mike. Of course, I couldn't say I disliked it, so every time I was called by the Johnny, I responded with a smile. And in my heart, I reminded myself it was all for my family. For my family's sake, I was prepared to laugh off any unpleasant feelings, no matter what. Jessica and I are getting married. We were going to announce it at the company's upcoming anniversary party, but I thought I'd tell you specially. So, you had better prepare a gift," Mike said. Jessica chimed in with a laugh. "Don't make Johnny celebrate for us. That's just sad. You need to be happy to celebrate others, and he's definitely not happy. You can tell just by looking at his face." I blurted out, "That's not true. I have a loving family, and I'm perfectly happy." I found myself shouting this more desperately than I intended. Seeing my reaction, the two of them looked at each other and burst into laughter. "What are you talking about with that tearful face, man? You don't love your family. You just have to think you do to bear being ridiculed at work every day," Mike said. Hearing his words, I felt my heart racing. I wonder what your beloved family would say if they saw how you're at work. If it were me, I'd feel sorry and think it's best to quickly divorce such a pathetic, unreliable husband and find someone else," Jessica said, then took Mike's arm. The two of them leaned close to each other, laughing mockingly as they walked away. Although their words left me shattered inside, the images of Linda and Anna still came to mind. Normally, I'd hurry home eager to see Linda and Anna, but that day, my steps were heavy. I took a moment to compose myself in front of the door so my family wouldn't notice my feelings, then opened it. Anna ran up to me with a smile, saying, "Welcome home." But the moment she saw my face, she exclaimed in surprise, "Dad, you are smiling so much. Did something fun happen?" And I looked a bit anxious despite her words, as if my forced smile had come across as unnatural. It seems I was trying so hard not to let my family realize what was in my heart that I ended up forcing a smile, resulting in an unnatural-looking laugh. Naturally, Linda also noticed and asked with a serious look, "Did something happen at work?" I wanted to reassure them by saying, "It's okay, it's nothing, but..." "What's wrong? Are you okay, Dad?" And I looked at me, startled. Linda looked at me with a surprised expression. Just then, their faces started to blur in front of me. I realized I was crying. Linda gave me a gentle smile. "Can you tell me what happened at work? I'm on your side. You can trust me, okay?" Encouraged by her words, I opened up about everything I'd been enduring from Mike and Jessica. Linda listened silently and thanked me for sharing at the end. Talking to her lightened my heart, and I was able to smile genuinely again. "I'm glad you're back to your usual self." Seeing Anna looking happy, I apologized her sorry for making you worry. "You don't have to apologize. Worrying isn't bad. It shows that the person is trying hard, but don't overdo it, okay? You have to take it easy too," she advised. Her words surprised me. When had Anna become so mature? Thanks to my wife and daughter, I was able to recognize my difficulties and went to work the next day with a clear mind. "Hey, Johnny, take out the trash. The bin is full." You might not care, being a high school graduate and odd job man, but I'm busy preparing for the anniversary party. Don't bother me, Mike barked. I responded with a smile. "Understood, Mike, but my name is John, not Johnny." Mike glared at me for a moment, probably too busy with the party preparations to argue, and left the office without another word. Standing up for myself felt refreshing, and I immediately thought of Linda and Anna. Yes, it's because of them that I can be strong. I decided to stop sacrificing myself for my family's sake. Maintaining my own pride and doing my job well is what truly benefits my family. And the anniversary party wasn't unrelated to me. I was personally invited by Mr. Thompson. Moreover, he invited Linda as well. John is like a son to me, so I'm grateful to Linda for supporting you as a wife. The party is also a way to express my gratitude, so I hope you both enjoy it," he said. In fact, our marriage was possible thanks to Mr. Thompson, who mediated between our families. After my father's death, I started working immediately after high school to support my frail mother. Linda's parents were initially hesitant about letting their daughter marry someone like me. I understood their perspective. Naturally, they didn't want their well-cared-for daughter to face hardships. I was ready to give up if her parents disapproved. However, Linda insisted on not leaving me, straining her relationship with her parents due to our marriage discussions. Feeling responsible yet helpless, Mr. Thompson extended his support. "John is like a son to me. Please allow him to marry Linda. I vouch for his character." He persuaded Linda's parents by visiting them personally. His influential words, coming from a well-respected figure, had a profound effect. Linda's parents not only approved our marriage but also offered to pay for the wedding. Linda wasn't pleased with her parents' sudden change of attitude, but I was genuinely happy to have their blessing. "You're the world's biggest softie. That's one of your good points, but sometimes you need to stand up for yourself," I responded. "You should be more grateful to your parents. They won't be around forever. We should avoid conflicts as much as possible." Hearing us, Mr. Thompson smiled and said, "You two really get along well. I'm glad I could help bring you together." We looked at each other and felt a bit embarrassed. I remember that moment. We truly owe a lot to Mr. Thompson. And then, The day of the company's 30th anniversary celebration came. Considering Anna is still in middle school, we decided to leave her with Linda's parents and headed to the venue. It had been a while since we went out, just the two of us. Upon arriving at the party venue, Linda seemed a bit nervous in the festive atmosphere. But then again, she comes from a good family, so this wasn't her first time in such a setting. I was more worried about feeling out of place myself. And there was something else on my mind. As expected, Mike and Jessica spotted us at the venue and approached us with a change of expression. What is a high school graduate who was hired midway through his career even invited here? Is this some kind of mistake by the HR department? It must be some kind of error. It's just absurd. I bet there isn't even a seat reserved for you. Jessica sneered with a mean look. Mike looked at me with a malicious grin. You and your wife can just sit on the floor, right? I couldn't believe he could say such a thing on such a grand occasion. Especially since it was Linda's first time meeting them. Normally, I would expect them a bit of courtesy. As I seethed internally, Jessica took an even more shocking action. Out of nowhere, she brought over a flattened cardboard box and said to us, "Use this." The cardboard hit the floor, kicking up dust, and I couldn't help but cough. Jessica pointed and laughed at me. I was willing to forgive her because she's Mr. Thompson's daughter, but this was too much. Even if they didn't know about my relationship with Mr. Thompson, this was too harsh. Linda watched the entire exchange silently with a smile, but then she opened her mouth to speak. She knew about the treatment from Mike, and she was a strong-willed person. That's why I was nervous that she might retort. But Linda gracefully greeted with a calm expression. "I'm sorry for the late introduction. I've heard so much about how Mike has been taking care of my husband." Mike glared at Linda with a spiteful look. "It's nothing like that. I'm sorry to say he's been stuck doing menial tasks every day. But don't worry, he's getting paid well enough for a janitor, ma'am." Jessica laughed at Mike's words. "Johnny here goes about his day being mocked for the sake of his beloved family, all the while smiling. It's a tearjerker, really. But I'm amazed you dared to show up here. Don't you feel out of place?" To speak so heartlessly even to Linda. I glanced at Linda, being worried about how she was taking this. Her profile was dignified, revealing her refined upbringing. At first glance, it seemed as if the cruel words hadn't affected her at all. However, I noticed a slight tremble in her lips. I couldn't tell if it was from anger or sadness, but it was the first time I had seen Linda like this. Instinctively, I placed my hand on her back and suggested, "Shall we go?" As if waiting for those words, she turned to me with her eyes brimming with tears and quietly agreed, "Yes, let's." She must have been holding back her feelings, not wanting to cause a scene, especially for my sake. Leaving was the best thing I could do for her. As we were about to leave, arm in arm, we were called and stopped. It was Mike, who had chased after us, his earlier smugness replaced by a pale face. "Wait, please come back. Mr. Thompson is asking for you. If you leave now, he said he'd fire me." "Who are you, exactly? What's your relationship with Mr. Thompson?" He gasped for breath, and Linda told Mike at once. "It seems you've finally realized the gravity of your actions. We've already discussed this with Mr. Thompson, but we'll be leaving now. If we do, you'll be fired, right? Then John won't have to suffer anymore." With those words, Linda placed her hand on my arm and urged, "Let's go." She seemed eager to leave this place as soon as possible. I simply nodded in agreement with her, saying, "Yes." "No, wait, please, I'm sorry for everything. And that was all just a joke. I never thought you'd take it seriously," Mike pleaded. Then, Linda suddenly turned around with incredible force. Startled by her sudden movement, I nearly stumbled. If you really mean to apologize, then don't make excuses." Linda's sharp voice echoed. She seemed truly furious, her face contorted in anger, and even Mike looked intimidated by her intensity. It had been a long time since I saw her like this, when we faced opposition from her parents about our marriage. I was helpless in the face of Linda's genuine anger. Then, Mr. Thompson arrived with Jessica in tow. "What Linda is saying is correct. You both should properly apologize to them. Come on, Jessica, apologize. As a parent, I'm deeply ashamed. It seems I've spoiled her too much just because she was born later in my life." Linda's anger seemed to subside with Mr. Thompson's intervention, and her fierce expression quickly faded. I was relieved to see Mr. Thompson handle the situation. "Furthermore, it seems you've been disrespectful to John on a regular basis at the company. He's a good person, so it didn't come to light until now. But normally, you could be sued for such behavior. People who can't respect the dignity of others have no place in my company," Mr. Thompson scolded them. Upon hearing this, Mike's head dropped in defeat. Afterward, Mike was demoted to a regular employee. And it is said the talk of Mike's marriage to Jessica also fizzled out. This was because Jessica moved to a distant area where her mother's family home was located. It turns out Mr. Thompson had divorced his wife. Apparently, their relationship had been cold for a long time, and they have stopped even greeting each other at home. The final straw was when his wife was caught embezzling company funds with an accountant she was having an affair with. To take responsibility and make amends, Mr. Thompson felt he had no choice but to divorce her and send her back to her family home. Mr. Thompson confided in me with a look of loneliness. "I may have spoken grandly in front of you, but I'm someone who couldn't even manage my own family. In contrast, your family seems genuinely happy. He was indeed a great father." By he, I mean my father. Mr. Thompson and my father had pledged to build a future together as business partners. They met in college, one the son of a political family, and the other a farmer's son from the countryside, and despite their different backgrounds, they became best friends. For Mr. Thompson, who had always been in a competitive environment, my father, with his simple and unpretentious nature, was his first true friend. After graduating, they promised to start a business together. While working for the company for the sake of his family, and simultaneously preparing to start his own business, my father got sick. Ultimately, he passed away, leaving my mother and me behind, without fulfilling his promise to Mr. Thompson. He had always felt guilty for taking my father away from us. He said helping me whenever possible was his way of atonement. But I never held any resentment towards Mr. Thompson. I knew my father trusted him until the end. My father regretted not being able to keep his promise with Mr. Thompson on his deathbed. When I told him about this, Mr. Thompson's eyes brimmed with tears as he apologized, saying, "I'm truly sorry." "Don't apologize. You've always said I'm like a son to you. I consider you as a father to me too. Please rely on me from now on," I said. Then, Mr. Thompson thanked me with a gentle smile, saying, "Thank you." It felt familiar, perhaps because it reminded me of my father. Months passed since Mr. Thompson's divorce. Although the relationship with his wife had been cold for a long time, I've heard that late-life divorces can be mentally and physically draining. This is because he has to take on the tasks that the spouse used to handle. Luckily, Mr. Thompson's sister and her husband lived nearby and occasionally checked in on him, but I was also concerned. So, Linda and I decided to regularly visit Mr. Thompson's home with our family, not just to comfort him but to maintain our connection. We'd have barbecues in his yard, and eventually, Anna started bringing friends over, and company employees and neighbors began to join. Thus, Mr. Thompson's home became a hub of social gatherings on weekends. It was then I truly understood the beauty of family. While it was always fun with just Linda, Anna, and me, expanding our social circle as a family made me see a hopeful future. I'm sure my late father would be pleased. Looking up at the blue sky, I felt as if he was watching over our happiness from heaven, smiling gently.